Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 119, Effective Communication with Your Customers.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to Small Biz Life. We're so happy you're here this week. If you are a new listener, thanks so much for checking us out. And if you're an old timer, you've been with us for a while, all 119 episodes, thank you so much for sticking with us. We're glad you're here.
We appreciate it.
If you're new to the show, my name's Kristin Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we're a husband and wife team of small business owners who are here to help you cut the crap out of your business so you can spend more time doing what you love.
Yes.
And, together, you've got 30 years combined experience. I'm a CPA. Jeff is our IT wizard. He handles everything technology for all of our clients. It's great.
I self-identify as a IT hobbit.
An IT hobbit. Okay. All right. That's interesting since hobbits didn't have the internet, but okay. Sure. We'll go with that. So, I think one thing that a lot of small business owners struggle with is effective communication with their customers. I see a lot of people in Facebook groups or, who call us for help that, they're having some sort of conflict with a customer. There's a disagreement. They feel like they're getting stepped on. Mm-hmm. And it causes a lot of stress and a lot of strife, and it's time consuming.
And I'd actually say this extends beyond customers. I'd say most people have a problem with clearly communicating with other people because we're under the misguided belief, at least at the time it's happening, that the conversation's about us. Mm-hmm. And so we're focusing more on the customer side of things and the business side of things. But this is true for your life. These things can be applied across the board. Of course, with your spouse, it might not help increase sales. But the thing is, a lot of times, I think we get caught up that conversations are about helping us, and conversations are about two people clearly getting a message back and forth.
Right, exactly. And so, I think when you're dealing with customers, when you're communicating with them, I think that the first tip that I would give you from my perspective, right, because I'm kind of thinking of this from like the CPA cover your butt perspective, a lot of those fights that people have to do with lack of clear expectations. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about, communication in general, but I think a lot of you need much more clear contracts. Mm-hmm. You need to have longer contracts that specifically spell out the terms of your agreements. And think about, the longer you're in business, the more experienced you get in, okay, this is probably something I should have in my contract, right? That is probably something I should have in my contract.
And that's the euphemistic way of saying that you've run into this problem so often that you've gotten to the point that you have pretty good contracts.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing is, I think a lot of times, people, they just kind of put the basic stuff in a contract, like what they think they're required to by law, and they're not using contracts to protect themselves, their time, and their boundaries.
And it's so funny because, in my field, which I can't speak for all fields, but, if you work anywhere in IT, from developing to maintaining to network, whatever you do, pretty much most people outside of it just call you IT. Mm-hmm. It's like this thing that is the same. I remember my first boss his boss would call me into his office to look at his printer or, figure out what's going on with this phone because I was close and he knew he could call and I would come and I would get it taken care of. None of those things were my job, but I was the computer guy. So, the thing is, you think it's self-descriptive when I say, well, I said on the website, and this is not part of the website. And so that does not count. But in the customer's mind, to him, it's a freaking computer thing.
Right. And I think that causes a lot of the issues is that people are like, well, I hired you to do all things Facebook. Mm-hmm. So that means that you should run my group and you should come up with activities for the group to do. And you're like, no, I run Facebook ads for you. That's what I'm not an admin, And so it's very important, I would even put things in my contract that like, these are the hours that my business is open. Mm-hmm. If you contact me outside these hours, I will get back to you on the next business day.
If you call me with a question and it takes more than 15 minutes, I'm going to bill you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. This is
at X rate.
Right. This is what's included in the scope of our contract. Mm-hmm. You have to protect yourself. So that's like the first thing with communication that I think is incredibly important.
I'm a big believer too, especially when you're talking about that kind of stuff. When you talk about what is in the contract, you always want to talk about what's not in the contract. Mm-hmm. And it's the things that you have come across that you've learned via the hard way that people believe that are in there. Even though you've just said that these aren't one of the things I've just said, I really mean I'm not going to admin your Facebook group. I'm not going to walk your dog. I'm not going to do these.
I don't do your laundry.
The things that people keep coming to you and thinking that you're supposed to do, be explicit so that the next person does not have that wrong expectation.
Yep. And one more thing regarding that. Make sure that when you do an estimate for somebody, when you do a proposal, there is a deadline. Okay? So I know a lot of people, if they give a proposal and then the person will call them back like 18 months later and say, okay, I'm ready to work for you. I'm ready to accept the proposal. I think that most proposals, 30 days max on a proposal.
If it's a high job, if it's a high cost thing and a bureaucratic type of, it might be 90 days.
Right. But I think that's like if you're working with government. I think if you're working with a small business.
Well, if you're working with the government, you're working on their time schedule no matter what.
Right. But to accept the contract.
I think it depends. We're talking about like tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It might take more than 30
It might take.
days.
But I don't see any reason why if you're working with an individual or a small business, you give them more than 30. I'm sorry. Because small business owners, by their nature, will drag their feet unless somebody applies pressure. So, if it's service-based, I would give them 14. If it's a large ticket item, I'd give them 30. But that's it. And say after that, we have to reevaluate the terms. The cost might change.
And you see that on a lot of good estimates where it's like, due to we can't control our cost, we can only guarantee this price for X number of days. And I do think Kristen's right. A lot of people go way too long where you like these 365 day, like guaranteed prices. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it with you. Like, I know it's a kitchen, they're expensive, and it might take me a year to save it, but I'm not going to even remember you in a year.
Well, and it always kind of, because as small business owners, we know that our costs go up. We know that prices change. We know the cost of materials change. So it kind of makes me a little squidgy when a contractor gives me 365 days.
There's so much fat built into that contract.
Right. Like, am I the only person that thinks that? Like,
I do.
Because I'm like, how do you know? Like, I mean, we've seen, like, even if you look at, like, the price of gasoline, right? We've gone from $1 a gallon, let's say $2 a gallon to $4 a gallon and back down to $2 in a span of a couple years.
And you're telling me, like, on a $15,000 kitchen remodel, that the price on all those goods are going to be on average the same within a year.
Yeah, I have a difficult time with that. I really do. So I just wanted to get, before we get into like the really nitty gritty of communicating.
And most of this will be just big sort of nitty gritty tips.
Right. But that's the thing. I've been seeing a lot of people lately that are complaining that people are they think they're overstepping the contracts. And when we ask them like, okay, well, what does your contract say about that? They're like, well, it doesn't.
It says I'll perform monthly maintenance on something. For how long?
Right. How many hours is that? Like, what does that mean? Like, what is maintenance defined as?
It's like when I tried to do that kind of nonsense years ago, it was very explicit the length of time and then what the rate would be after that.
Yep. And that's the thing. And even define like what maintenance is. Because maintenance, like if you just put maintenance, somebody could be like, well, I don't really like how my homepage looks, so I want you to rebuild that as part of my maintenance package this month that I'm paying you, $30 a month for. That's craziness.
Or I the wiring in my building isn't good, so you need to rewire it as part of the maintenance for managing my network. What? No.
Right. So that's the thing, I think it's important when you're first starting out, have an accountant or an attorney, or maybe both, look at your contracts to see, like, do they make sense? Do they protect you enough? Okay. I've looked at a lot of contracts for clients and been like, no, you don't put this. You should put this, protect yourself this way. So it's just a good thing to do. And if you're using the same contract over and over again, isn't it worth a couple $100s to have somebody look at it to help cover your butt so that you're not so frustrated all the time?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
So now on to the first tip here. All effective speech is one-on-one communication. Even those great speeches you watch, you're like, yay. I felt like he was just talking to me.
That's very true.
You don't have a person in front of you that you're actually talking to where you can tailor the conversation specifically to that individual. You talk to your avatar, whether it's via speech, whether it's via blog post, whether it's via email, whatever. It's to your avatar unless you know the individual, like you're talking on the phone or you're across the table from each other. Unless you know it's someone else, your speech as a business owner should be to your avatar.
Yeah, and one thing when I'm speaking live, I will typically pick one person in the audience that I'm like, okay, that person really resembles my avatar. So anytime I need to like get recentered or refocused, or if I'm like switching to my next bullet point, that is the person that I go look at. Because then I'm like, I am talking to you first, right? And I'll scan the room, and you're looking all over, but you keep refocusing back on that one person. And that really helps when I'm speaking, especially to a large audience. Okay, so the next thing that you want to do is you want to be appropriate for the environment.
You and you're trying to be appropriate all the time.
So, whether you are on YouTube or Facebook, your newsletter, in person, if you decide to, go to Twitter or Instagram, what is appropriate for that environment?
In the forms of communication, is it video better than post? What's the thing that works there?
And here's my thing, okay? I think also you need to know which environment is appropriate for the discussion you need to have. There are times that clients will send me a text message and I will say, you know what, this is longer than a text message, and I will send an email back. And I'm trying to move my clients off of text messaging. We're almost there. You need to know when you need to stop sending emails and you need to get on the phone.
And be willing to convey it if you're having a back and forth with a customer online, good or bad, for whatever reason. But like this could turn into a potential sales thing, or this is an opportunity for you to help, keep a customer happy.
Or just, sometimes the conversation is just too complex.
Yeah.
What I find is like if somebody asks me a question and I give an explanation and then the person comes back with two more questions, I'm like, you know what? Let's get on the phone because you have questions about this. Let's just address them because it's going to be much quicker if we do it on the phone.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't be afraid to switch the mode of communication.
And I think I like the way you put that too, where it's like you have to be willing to tell them, hey, let's try this.
Well, because I think the problem is, so I talk to a lot of small business owners who just don't like to talk on the phone. And so they will try to deal with things via email. And again, right, we're trying to get you to cut the crap out of your business. How many times have you gotten into like 2-hour email back and forth with clients when if you would have picked up the phone, you could have resolved it in 15 minutes, right? And so that's the thing. You can recover a lot of time if you say, you know what? A text is not appropriate for this. It needs to be an email, or this needs to be a phone call, or maybe this needs to be an in-person meeting.
And part of it is knowing your customers, knowing how they perform in different areas. But typically, talking is more effective than not.
Yes.
And the thing is, so we're saying being appropriate for the environment is not only how do you deliver stuff in certain places like on social media, being willing to change up the environment when it makes sense. Like it's really tough, and I've done this before with people on YouTube, and we're going back and forth having a conversation on YouTube comments. You're kind of like, hey, if you go to the Facebook group, we could talk there, and more people could get value out of it. It would be better.
Right. And I've done that with people. One of the big things I'm doing right now is I'm trying to get off of Facebook Messenger. Because of, especially I think because of accounting and focus, I have a lot of people who reach out to me via Messenger, and I don't want to communicate that way anymore because it's a thing that it pops up. It creates urgency that really doesn't need to be right. That really doesn't need to be urgency. And it's funny because people will like kind of push back. I'm like, hey, send me an email. Here's my email address. And I had somebody this weekend, I'm trying to recover our weekends and not work on the weekend. And this kid is like messaging me, and he's like, and I said, send me an email. And he's like, well, I just want 5 minutes on a live call. I'm like, live call? No, send me an email. And he started like live calling me, and eventually I had to block him, because like he just kept being persistent. You have to have the courage to say, these are my boundaries, these are my limits, and this is how I want to be communicated with, and live by it. So again, it's not just knowing what's appropriate in the environment or for the situation, but what do you feel is appropriate for you and your business? Yeah.
Now this next one is a tough one for me because, and I think it's tough for a lot of people, but I think in the world of IT, when people think you do computers, it's even more so, but it's speak their language, not yours. And the problem is, especially getting to my field, it's like there's so many people blogging about HTTPS and all of this stuff that a lot of these things that to me are kind of basic, like kind of protocol stuff. And you see all over the internet now, you don't know how anyone couldn't know. And then you start talking and you realize that they don't.
Well, and that's because, I think we all gravitate towards stuff that we're interested in. And so like if you're interested in technology, you're going to spend more time in those corners of the internet.
And Facebook and Google are pretty good at serving up what they think that you want.
Right, exactly. So that's the thing is like we kind of think everybody sees that.
Some people will be shocked to find out I don't get a lot of knitting stuff in my feed.
I get a lot of knitting stuff in my feed though. So see, I think the whole world is knitting. Yeah.
Never heard of it.
So you have to. And that's one thing I try to teach my accounting students because I think they have the same issue that, it's funny because I'm going through this exercise right now with my seniors where they're writing tax memos and they're doing letters to clients explaining complex tax issues. And it's like they're quoting code in the letters to the clients and they're putting code sections and I'm like, no, because you're going to confuse clients. They're not going to know what you're talking about. Just say it like in regular language, like the language you would have used before you took this class. And it's like, I have some of them that are fighting back because they're like, no, I want to sound smart. Like I know what I'm talking about. And the best way.
I think that's the biggest lure into that path is you want to have authority in what you're an expert in.
But here's the thing.
But you backfire because no one understands you.
Right. The best way that you can show authority in your field is to be able to explain very complex things in a way that most people can understand.
Analogies here are your best friend, which is why we talk about like what do you need for a website? We like to use the analogy of a phone, because most people are used to having phones, but they get confused between domain hosting, self-hosting, and you start getting all the bits, and they don't understand all of that, but they understand having a phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's originally how we explained to people. Like, I remember when you started building websites for people back in 2005, that's kind of how we explained it.
We kind of developed that one. Yeah. Because to me, I started explaining this is what we need, and heads would explode. And Kristen's like, no, you can't say that to people. Like, what?
They're like, well, I don't understand. Like, what's a domain and why do I need hosting?
I just want to strip their header, honey. What are you talking about? What's the problem?
You know, and it's funny because, like, yeah, and we came up with that because people kept asking, like, well, I don't understand. Like, why do I need to buy this thing? And then why do I need to buy this thing?
You say I need this, but then all of a sudden I need all of these other things. And it's all really one thing.
Yeah. So what we kind of came up with is we said, okay, so your domain, you know, your www.blablabla.com, that's like your phone number. And your web hosting, you know, that's like your phone service, right? So if you just tell people this is my phone number, but you don't pay, you know, T-Mobile or Verizon for the service, they're going to get the this number is no longer in service. And that's kind of what happens on the internet. If you type in the www.blablabla.com and you don't have a web host, it's going to say, hi, there's nothing here.
So then you got to pay for the number and for the phone service.
Right. And when we explained it to people that way, they went, oh, okay, now I get why I'm paying $10 a month for this, you know, for the hosting, and I'm paying $10 a year for the domain. Okay, got it.
And the irony is you're really paying to not have a number. Sorry. I guess that's a little too geeky.
Yeah, don't be geeky. You're losing your effective communication with our audience because it is not appropriate.
It's not appropriate. Well, I've been told I'm not appropriate, so... Now, the next thing, which is really funny today, because we've had people like snow blowing or something outside.
And cats. We've had cats meowing.
Cats going crazy. But you want to have low noise environments. You know, there's the classic thing of, yeah, you need a wheel deal, take the guys out to bars to close the deal for the business kind of stories. And where there might be an effect to take someone out to the bar, it's not to talk to them. Because the bar is going to be too loud. You know, you need places where you can communicate with each other, low noise, especially if this is something you're trying to scale out by delivering a podcast or doing a video where there's audio voice in it. The noise has to be low so they can hear the words.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, there are going to be times where that is not possible. Do the best you can. You know, so... You know, if your kids are home and they're playing downstairs, maybe take the call upstairs. You know, if you're going to be doing live content, you know, tell your spouse, hey, I'm going to be live, you know, just so you know. Because we've both done this where the other person didn't know the person was going live. We're like, hey, babe, what are you? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And then I say something inappropriate and it's like all across Facebook the next moment. Oh.
But that's why, you know, it's important to kind of have that communication with the rest of the people in your house. With cats, it's a little bit harder because they just do their
Jump
thing.
Up. That's
right. They just, you know, go. You know, try to avoid interruptions. You know, and again, you know, it's all about kind of communicating with the people who are around you. You know, I've been on like Hangouts with a client and my phone, like the phone rings, you know, and it makes a ton of noise. So don't forget to like turn off things like your phone if you're going live. You know what I'm talking about, like your home phone. Or for God's sakes, people, 99% of the time when I am out and about in public, my phone, the ringer is off. It's just on vibrate. It really throws people off when your phone starts ringing in the middle of a class, in the middle of a seminar, in the middle of a webinar.
If you're talking to them one-on-one and they like look at the phone, like, I'm determining right now whether or not this is more important than you.
Exactly. But that's the thing. I think, you know, we've kind of gotten to this point where we're so used to having phones with us all the time that we forget like what it was like when we didn't, and there wasn't ringing all around us all the time.
I think most of us actually even know it's rude. And the important reason to turn off the ringer is because it's trained us so well that we sit there and we'll look and we'll go, I just did that, didn't I? I just looked at my phone while talking to this other person. I hate when it happens to me. I know I've done it to other people.
That's why a lot of times, like when I'm in meetings with clients, my phone is in my purse and my purse is on the floor.
Yes.
And the ringer's off.
I mute my phone.
When I teach a class, I always put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I tell my clients or my students to do the same thing. You can't always avoid interruptions.
Nope.
But you can do your best to minimize
How many
them.
times have you ever called and been on the phone with someone? Let's say you have a customer service question, so you're calling someone, and they're like, wait, can I put you on hold? Sure, I have nothing better to do. Sit here and talk to you on the phone to figure out why your part doesn't work for me? Sure. I'll be on hold too, yeah. Yeah. Okay, cable company, thank you.
And I understand, like, some companies have policies where they cannot help you unless you're on the phone. It's very, it's very tough.
I think that's lower on the list, though.
Okay. So, what do you mean by positive questions?
Don't ask them to tell you no.
Yes, that's very good.
It's whenever you have conversations with clients, with anyone, it's a good strategy psychologically to keep them in a positive mood. You keep them saying yes.
Yes. So think about how you can ask questions to get a positive response.
And ask questions to get a positive response sometimes if you don't need it. Watch Russell Brunson. He's brilliant at this. He will say yes 500 times in a sales video before he asks you to buy something.
Do you like cookies?
Yes.
Well, yes, I love cookies.
I mean, we all love cookies. I remember this time when I was a kid, I was eating a cookie. Do you remember just the taste of the cookie melt in your mouth? Wasn't it delicious? And you can get these whole things and use your stories to get them saying, use everything you have to get them saying yes. So whether it's sales or are you satisfied, the thing that comes to their mind is yes.
Exactly. The point is that when you get to the part where you have the big ask, right? Whether it's, are you ready to buy? Will you sign on the dotted line? You want them to say yes. And so, no, that's a wonderful strategy. And it works really well. There's something about saying yes that, like, you get all excited and you're like, yes, yes, we all say yes, yes, yes.
Yes, that's awesome.
And that's why, this is for effective written communication, but a lot of times we've had clients kind of push back on us because we're, when you do an opt-in and you're trying to get people to click the button, and I say, okay, you want them, when you deliver that free opt-in, you want them to go to another page. And like, no, can I just put in my email? And I'm like, no, because you want another page where they have to click to download it, right? There's a button, okay, that you want them to click, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get them used to clicking buttons on your website so that when that buy button pops up,
they say yes.
They say yes, and they click the button.
They trust you enough.
Right. It's all psychology.
And, we do understand, yes, everything I ask you to do on my website is one less person who's going to do it. I get that. The reason you do that is so the people who stay engaged with you on your website are people who say yes.
Yep. And you can totally, what I recommend people do is if you do want to send out that email so that if they want to download the opt-in later, send them back to that page so that they click the button to download.
Yes.
Yes.
You got me.
See?
Right there, yes.
Isn't that exciting?
Okay, now here's another one. Another reason to use SEO, Yoast. There is a readability tab that comes with it now, which will help score how readable it is. So you might have something really, really well written, and it might be flawlessly edited and a brilliant piece of work that would be great for high-level academics, but your avatar has an 8th grade reading level. Yeah. I mean, it's great, and you're going to sound really, it's kind of like sounding smart when you're talking to someone. We do it with our words sometimes, too, and the language needs to be appropriate. Most written language online, unless it's sort of meant to be more of an article, should be conversational. Same thing with your emails. Conversational, not grammared lead out.
Right. You're probably looking for a 7th to 8th grade reading level for most things that you write online. And I'll tell you, like, even when I wrote Accounting in Focus, which is geared for college students, it's written at about an 8th grade reading level to make it easier for students to understand.
But think about it too, even I will read things that are probably written for academics at times. I get interested in things like studies. I might not read them all, but I'll read portions of them because sometimes they fascinate me. And the thing I find is if I'm getting that kind of content from somewhere besides a study, I don't want the kind of language. I'm capable of reading it. I have an above average vocabulary. But most of the time I'm reading, I don't want to be burdened by reading. I just want it to happen.
Right, exactly. And I think you have a little bit more leeway in how you speak than when you're writing. Because typically when people are listening, they can process information more quickly at a higher level.
Or they don't see that there's no comma in the sentence.
But yeah, I think that's the thing, you know, and this is, again, like Russell Brunson is really big on this, but when you're writing to people, write like you're having a conversation. We don't always speak in sentences. We don't. But we've been trained that we always have to write in sentences.
And we don't. Now, if your avatar is you're trying to sell products to editors that are anal about grammar, better be good.
Exactly.
But for most people, most of the time, it's not an issue.
Yeah. And that's why, like, you'll see, you know, when you get emails, especially from people, you know, from online personalities, there are incomplete sentences, there are kind of thoughts, there are, you know, it reads very conversational.
One of the important things that they have on there is the Flush Reading Ease score, where they actually can algorithmically calculate. And it's part of the SEO Yoast. If you have it, you can just look to see if you have the green light, you're fine. If you don't have a WordPress site, or you're doing, let's say, an email, you just want to verify it before you send it, I'll put a link in the show notes. There's one I found where you can copy and paste text into called readabilityformulas.com. And I'll put the link to their Flush Reading Ease Index. So especially if it's an important communication that you want to make sure has a good, easy grade thing, I'll go to the show notes. We'll have a link for you.
Okay, awesome. All right, so you have 4 tips for better customer service calls.
4-ish.
4-ish? Well, yeah, because there's a lot of bullet points. So there's like 4 main points.
There's 4 main points here.
Okay.
You know, the first one is always put your best foot forward. Focus on getting good first impressions.
Yeah, that's really key.
But you know what? Don't lose it. Okay? Don't lose it.
Yeah, I noticed that it drives me crazy when people call, and if you're a business owner, you probably get a lot of sales calls. We're like, hi, my name's...
If you start babbling to me on the phone as soon as I pick up and I respond to you, I'm not going to buy.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So if you go through your thing, usually the first thing asked is like, hi, I'm sorry, where are you calling from? And if I feel like you are being disingenuous, that you are not telling the truth...
You're hopping into a script immediately.
Right, you're done. Done. Okay? And that's the thing. And think about that's first impression, right?
But then it's important too to remember that as you go through is the first impression, it will typically linger, but you can really and sometimes life will force it to happen. Like your car blew up and you couldn't make the appointment. Stuff happens. So, but in general, if things go normal, you shouldn't lose your first impression. But your processes might.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, make sure that you clearly identify who you are when you call.
And be genuine in why you're calling.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I'm just calling to see if you're okay today. And then I'm trying to sell you my coaching service. That's not true.
Yeah, that doesn't work. And the thing is, too, it's like, and don't do that online either, right? Because your first impression is really important.
For any of your communication.
Right, exactly.
Next one. When you're having conversations with people, listen, think, respond.
And I think one thing, again, because we're always trying to be experts and we want to show people we know everything. Sometimes when we think and we go, oh crap, I don't know the answer, it's okay to say, you know what? Can I get back to you on that? Because there's a couple things I want to look up, you know.
That's a really good question. Tell them that's a really good question. I'm not certain. And you could even say, well, it could go this way or it could go that way, but I'm not 100% positive in the circumstance you just told me.
Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times people think that we are experts in everything, right? So like I'll have clients who contact me and they're like, oh, hey, here's this. I'm sure this is really simple for you. And they lay out this really complex situation that like, the Supreme Court has battled over multiple times in tax law. And they're like, so can you just give me an answer? And I'm like, okay, that's a really good question. I need to do some research on that because I want to make sure that I give you the most up-to-date information, right? And that's a really good way to do it, up-to-date information, especially if you're in tech or tax or law or whatever. And then I'll get back to you, right? You don't always have to respond with an answer, a solution at that second. Because
that's also what leads you to be that tech or tax person or whatever the person is in your profession who has had that answer for 30 years. And it might have been right 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that, in tax, the longer that I'm in tax. I do a lot of education in tax. I read tax bills. I read regulations as they come out. And there are a lot of accountants out there who don't.
I remember my last 10 years I was working for other people in information technology. I worked a lot on what they would call product management, like managing like the life cycle of a product from its birth to its death, if that ever happens. And you'd inevitably get caught in these meetings, and they would always say, "I just reminds me because you were talking about just a second ago, this will be easy for you guys to do." In my informal poll in my head, about 95% of the time, a client, a business user, or someone not in my area told me it was easy for someone like me to do. It was almost never. It's like a built-in nature thing, I think.
But don't just say the first thing that comes to your mind, what you think the answer might be.
And the reason I say think too isn't just to sound like a jerk. The reason is sometimes when you thoughtfully pause, people don't like silence. So if they have something more to fill in, they actually will. They'll start giving you more information sometimes. And the other thing is the worst thing is, and I'm horrible for this sometimes, interrupting people. I get so excited, especially if it's a conversation I'm engaged in. I can just start stepping on the person over and over and over again because and this, and that. And I know Kristin has seen me do this before, and I don't necessarily mean to do it. But if you take a moment to think before you respond, it gives them a moment to have some separation between their conversation and yours. And make sure that they're done speaking so that you can do it without sounding like a jerk.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I was on a phone call today. And so being from New England, being from Massachusetts, we speak quickly and we tend to abruptly end whatever we're talking about. So
and as soon as there's a millisecond pause, that means you can take over the conversation.
Right. So I was on the phone with a gentleman today and he was asking me questions, but like the question never wrapped up. Like it didn't end. So it was like there was sort of a question mark, but then he'd keep talking into a sort of a question mark way. And like I found like I kept going, okay, I'm going to answer the question now. And you might get frustrated in situations like that. But the thing is, it's like you've got to wait for them to stop. Because again, Jeff said don't lose your first impression, right? If it's a good one. And so like in the end, I was like, oh, wait, I think he's done. Okay, I'm going to answer the question now. Yay. And so, but it takes like you listening and thinking and going, okay, is he done? Okay, no. Okay. Oh, what? Oh, okay. Because that's the thing, it shows that you're actually listening to the person, you're giving them respect. And by the end of the call, I was really good, but I noticed that during the call that I was kind of stepping on what he was saying because I was just like, well, you just finished asking the question, please. Okay, go. So listen, think, respond. I like that. I think that's good. Prioritize customer service calls.
Customer service first. Play the long game. The most important call that comes into your business a day is not a new inquiry. It's not the sales call. It is the customer service calls. And you really have to prioritize taking care of your customers. One, it will help drive you more business. But ultimately, that is what will sustain you through thick and thin.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we think that we have to take every call. We have to put people on hold.
Every time the phone rings.
And, if your voicemail says, hi, thank you for calling blah, blah, blah business. We're currently on the phone or helping another customer, and that customer is just as important. We will call you back as soon as we can. It shows that when that customer gets your phone call, you're not going to interrupt them either. And so it's showing a level of respect that you have for your customers.
And a couple sub bullets with that one. Avoid the hold button. Someone walks into your office, your staff needs to know if your hand goes up. Because if your hand goes up, it means you go away. Not right now. I'm on the phone.
And not the customer, but if it's the employee or whatever.
The employee or your husband, your kid, all need to be trained that when you're on the phone in the office, you're talking to a customer, it's not the time to interrupt.
Yeah. Don't make them wait for you. Unless you're on the phone with another customer.
What I meant with that one is more reminding me from your conversation about your customer service with companies that keep you on the phone while they fix the problem on the computer. You've talked for 2 hours, they figured out what the problem is and they need to fix it, but we have to put you on hold while we actually do the work now.
Yeah, I think companies, you really need to rethink that practice.
Take down the phone number, hang up the phone, fix it, call them back. Don't make them call you back.
Yep.
Call them back and say, okay, that was the problem and I fixed it and it should no longer be an issue.
Yeah, and I'll do that, right now we're in the middle of registration for students and, we're running into all sorts of issues with the computer system. So if a student calls me, say, you know what, let me resolve this issue for you. I'll call you right back. Or would you prefer I send you an email and let you know it's taken care of? That way the student doesn't have to sit on the phone with me.
And if you tell them you're going to call them back, staple it to your forehead if you need to. Call them back.
Yep. Usually I'll ask, and I do this with clients too. Do you want me to call you back? Or do you want me to send you an email to verify? And sometimes I say, oh, just send me an email. That's fine.
Because maybe they don't want to talk to you again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and do what you say you're going to do. I really hope, though, that big businesses will change their policy on customer service. I'm tired of being on hold so that a company can fix my issue. Because the way that customer service policies for big businesses work is the second that representative gets off the phone, they have to pick up another call. And so they have to be on the phone all the time. Companies have to stop that policy. It is not good customer service.
Short-sighted. And if you want to differentiate yourself to us and get a sale over a company that's bigger and cheaper, bring us that proposal.
Because I would pay more to work with companies if I know I have to call them, if I don't have to sit on hold while they fix my problem.
Yeah.
So if you work for a big company, change your policy.
And if you're a small company, don't fall into that trap.
Because in the end, right, the fourth tip is treat people like they're people. Right? How would you want to be treated? And I think when we as small business owners design our policies to treat people as we would want to be treated, it's really amazing how your perspective changes. I want clear guidelines from the people I work with on what is and is not part of the contract. I want good customer service. I want to be treated like a human being. I want people to speak in a way that I understand what they're saying. Is that too much to ask? I don't think so. So are you doing that for your customers? Really think about this. Our goal here is to help you build the business you've always wanted. And for most businesses, you're like, there's one thing. There's one step that will take you, noticeably further in creating the business that you've
10x.
always wanted. 10x, right? Maybe this is your thing. Maybe it's locking down your contracts and making sure they're clear, or speaking your customer's language and treating them like they're real people. If that's your thing, let us know. Let us know if it's working for you. The best way to do that is join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/smallbizlife. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
This was Small Biz Life.